Yes. Mhm. I know.
And most people don't have to come, so.
Well, I'm hoping I can get this on. I can't seem to get this screen on. So, I'm not sure what this is. Do that. You're not be able to get those. Oh, sure it's- I don't know enough about smart TVs. But this is not,
Smart.
yeah, it's not looking too smart today. Actually. Yeah, I don't know how this stuff works.
Superior.
Yeah, there. Oh, I shut it on. And turn it on. Oh, I know what I'm gonna do. I think. I have a concept here. So if it's in the PC, which is not what I want. I want to do that. And I want to go there. Ooh, stop that.
Is he bringing his own materials to show?
Nope. So I think we're.
That bonus round song, the puzzle was unbelievable.
What the
You
heck?
got it in the last 10th of a second. What was that like?
It was
Oh, boy.
unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. I didn't even know what was.
I wonder, does it matter if we have it still on just here? And we just don't see them up there?
Oh,
So
okay,
if we just have them here. Because I can see,
well, as long as they can see us.
yeah, I think
Right.
we can, except it's not twirling to talk to you. Which is weird. Huh. They're gonna do something to. Hello, how are you? Oh, I think now it is. I think it's working. This isn't working, but this is working. Okay, let's see if it flips and comes to me. That's working. Yes. It got warm in here too. I don't know, it was really cold on Sunday in here,
Huh,
and then. When Julia just came in, she's like, what is wrong? I go, I don't know, but it was freezing on Sunday. The air conditioning was. Since she was gonna change it, it's because it was really cold. So how are you doing, Fred?
I'm doing well, I'm doing well. Lori's got dogs. She's doing like a 5-day stretch. I think she'll be married, I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah, because that's where she was going, right?
Yeah, that's right. I do get mixed up. But, I'm dealing with everybody else. Which is.
Good.
How are you?
How you doing?
Right. Right.
Yes, of course, we read news. Yeah. Downtown.
How you doing?
Well, I remember your names.
Yeah, you do well.
It's okay.
It's the one thing I still do, I still
That's
remember
good.
the names. I remember the names from like 30 years ago, like that's what I remember.
I remember one professor I knew would take pictures with the students.
Yeah,
And I understand why he did it, he perfectly did, but that's dangerous.
yeah, there's actually now, like, there are roster pictures. So like when you call up in this whole
Okay.
digital world,
Uh-huh,
they'll give us their ID, they'll give us
Uh-huh.
the picture so that we know who they are. And in a certain way, they're just asking us to check up on. Cause we get these sort of periodic, like, are they okay? Are they showing up?
uh-huh.
Cause it's a showing up thing that they're worried. I think it's. So. Yeah, and it's it's a brave new world out there, so. You have to be sort of mindful of changes in the times and. What's expected of you. I do think that I'm much more self-censored than I've ever been, especially in the last 10 years.
Uh-huh.
Although I think our climate is pretty
A friend who's going.
inviting,
Okay,
And
that should be on.
open-minded. especially
This is
the
the
folks
Zoom.
I work with who are
This
lovely, you
can't
know,
seem
like,
to
you
get
know,
off that
yeah, she's a
screen.
pretty small
Maybe
person.
Right.
So
Okay.
she's the member of the I've on board.
But it's tricky.
So that's fine.
So.
She should
so we're doing-
Excuse me?
It's tricky.
I told her.
Yeah, it is, for sure. And hey, Professor, how are you?
Good.
She's from
Well,
Berkeley, California. Okay. You experienced the change in the kids actually
I'm
doing
not
the work.
getting,
yes, and how many, people ask me if they're differently prepared. But they're just as curious and capable as they've ever been, because they're curious and capable humans. Question is, what have they been reared in? You know, what's the context and the environment of their experience, you know, like. I mean, obviously, I'm a dinosaur. I come from a world that doesn't exist anymore, and for which they have no reference. You know. So there's that for sure. I think we're all in a quandary about what AI is going to do to humanities. We just don't know.
Yeah.
I think that,
Humanity.
well, yeah, I mean, and that's just it too. I mean, it would be delinquent, truant, for goodness sakes, to ignore it. In the sense that it is their future. It's not my future.
There's a lot of faculty who that's what they decided to do. It doesn't exist. And
Right.
You're wrong. You can't do that.
No, you can't do that. But I do think that none of us on my side of the street yet know how to incorporate it, especially since I was reared in a world where religion is our subject. It's not our method. That's also a distinction to be made. You know, what happens in the chapel or what happens in the synagogue as a spiritual phenomenon is the subject of our study, right? Like, we're not here to advocate, we're not here to inculcate, we're here to take up the subject, as it would be for any subject in the university, which we've always had a hard time explaining to the scientists and to civilians. Now, but studying religion is a tricky matter because people's identity and their tender feelings and their histories and their stories are involved in it, and you need to be particularly respectful. It's not, you don't have the same feeling like when you walk into chemistry class, you know, like, but, and I'm a chemical. I'm chemical, but I don't presume to know anything about chemistry. But everyone presumes to know something about religion. So, which sort of is kind of an interesting thing, because from my point of view, it's a subject. But it's also, you know, I mean, we'll talk about it tonight a little bit because I came to it as a seeker and dodged and weaved through different iterations of that. But I've never seen my purpose, especially in college, as being subject centered. I've always seen it as, I'm here to teach you to read closely, think critically, write argumentatively, not tell you what to think, try to teach you how to think and articulate yourself. And that very basic strategy seems virtually, it's not anachronistic, it's almost over, you know, like it seems over.
I'll go get it.
And I'm learning every week, sort of what AI can do and what it can't do. And the interesting thing about that is it's getting smarter every year. There's no doubt about it. But what it can't yet do is make informed judgments. It's not good at that. Rabbi,
How are you?
I'm well, sir. How are you?
Well,
Nice to see you. Thanks for coming.
sorry I missed your other lecture.
Oh, you didn't miss a thing. You
I
know.
was,
You know.
that's not what happened.
Oh, well, I'm glad. Oh, through. Yeah,
We were in Israel,
you're good. Oh, that's good.
so.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Lovely.
yeah. No mean to interrupt.
No, not at all. I'm just, we've got a few minutes. The meter's running.
yeah. And I'm stuck on the street, so I don't know why,
Oh.
I can't get that.
Where's your?
I got my
Unplugging?
finger. Oh, I've done this, and so I did that little clicker thing to be on the PC.
I'm gonna give you something fun.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you what. Nice to do it.
I know.
250 pages of lecture notes.
So I just looking, so we still
Actually,
can work on Zoom,
yeah.
we should be
Yeah,
able
it's
to.
not even.
But it's primary text.
Something that maybe, what's his name then?
Let's try now.
Thought I got in a little over my head.
Then we're waiting to see if anybody comes on.
It's never,
I know,
it's
it's like
beyond my,
beyond my instructional
just
sheet.
because I never should, yeah. Which by now is probably should, supposed to, be. Maybe the cord is not.
Ten full pages.
Oh,
It's 10 pages.
oh, so you get a whole
You
package.
get a whole package.
Like Kate Blood. Then we have to run through it.
Trying to hand them out in, as they are. Okay,
That's probably easy.
yeah, yeah.
Is he running?
Something odd.
So, again, I should say, the anachronism of the world, right? So I print this out at home, and I usually don't ask anything from the university anymore. If you don't look at me, I won't look at you. Good. I'm under your radar, but, so, these are ink cartridges that you put in, right? So, and Amazon, so you go back and hit, let's do this again. Last time I bought this 3 months ago, they were $43, but you try to go like, what an enormous ripoff, like, what a huge ripoff, it is over 60. Really? How are you?
I can admit, but you know what? I made it small, now I don't have to make it bigger.
Yeah, yes, you probably won't get there, but I thought I'd give you the whole story. That's the case you want, though.
See, I did get the person. It's just this we can't get.
Takes a look.
You wanna do the plug unplug, because I did the restate.
I was gonna say, is it? We scroll over, is it gonna be next to it? Yeah, there it is.
Oh, there you go.
Just like it. Okay, thank you. Somebody fiddled with something, that's all I'm gonna say. You don't know that was a thing.
Yeah, it was a Bible screen.
This is what I have to do at work, because I'm working.
Unless it's.
Writing.
I know what to do.
We had to do a duplicate screen, so we were missing our duplicate, so we have like all of our experts here. This is exciting. Yeah, this is
Oh, sure.
Oh, Ruby got the other papers, right?
Just want to say hello to them. Hey, Lynn. Can you hear me?
No.
It's supposed to run.
My own family.
What does she see? She sees.
Yes, I can hear you, Jim. Hello.
All right.
Thank you.
We're starting soon, yeah. Just say us.
You should see us.
Yes, yeah.
I don't really need to be so big on the screen.
You for sure.
Okay, but I'll put it right
And usually our other screen would come up, and you wouldn't be so big.
No idea.
Oh, okay.
Yes, thank you so much.
But you can see the room, correct?
I can see the room, yeah.
We're going with it the way it is.
Yeah. I can share with my husband also if you.
Ooh, yeah, can I get this other?
Sure.
Sharing is.
And then I still have leftovers from the.
Yes, those are another piece.
Yeah, the next one. That was light-handed.
You need to make more
Yeah, I
copies.
handed it a second
I can make more copies. but-
Can you make one for Tyler?
Oh, a couple more. Then we can share.
I printed, and I think a bit, 10, 12 minutes out. Anyway, I ran out of ink. And they were $63 a copy. I got mad at Amazon.
Wow. I'm start using a university printer again.
Yeah, I don't. In fact, I could, I've got, there's a room for all that stuff and I just don't do it.
Other ones from the other movies.
I can't.
Besides going through the works here.
That would mean me having to go there. And if I don't have to go there, I won't.
Okay. Okay.
What is it for?
I'm teaching English as a new language at a charter school.
What kind of kids are in this one?
It's K through 6 students in poverty in the RCSD in Greece.
Oh, God.
Done it for, I think, around long enough. I'm gonna
Yeah.
get back into school.
That's cool.
And it's not what I studied or anything.
Right, right. Yeah, my daughter teaches a grade school. And I think of those folks as like saintly, doing the hard work. Like by the time I get you.
It's rewarding, but I don't make very much money and
Right, right.
I'm not learning, you know.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Elementary school especially, everything's about simplifying rather than sort of, you know.
Yeah, and yeah, that's another thing that we can say about what's changed in the room is that I've always thought like the purpose in college is to up your game.
Yeah.
Right, so I had a student come forward to me a couple semesters ago. And she said, could you use simpler words? And I said, no.
Dictionary.
Not here to be successful, you're gonna stay.
Yeah, but if I say, and then I said, but if I use a word that you don't know, look at me quizzically or up and to the left, or, you know, I won't call you out or anything, I'll just help you.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's what you're here for.
I was telling you, some things have years ago, the adjuncts of MCC, but I have that
The very same thing.
logically, like you're using too many big words when I was teaching MCC.
Right.
But to hear that it's a U of R, it's,
Well, again, you know, like, I think one of the challenges of higher education right now too, even at places like the U of R, is the relationship between, I mean, it's a kind of, it's an elitist view of the world, but we talked to a standard because we were admitted to a standard. And what I love about MCC and other places is that that's not the beginning point. The beginning point is anyone who comes,
right, that's true.
right? And we're not in anyone who comes. Like, that's not how it was devised. Now a fourth of the student body doesn't have English as a first language.
Oh, okay.
So how do I address that when students in the class, I mean, I can't manage 8th grade Mandarin, but they can't manage 9th grade English. And in STEM schools, I mean, I pointed this out a few semesters ago, unfortunately at a meeting, or maybe the last time I'll speak. When a math teacher said, well, you don't need to speak English.
Yeah.
To do the work, and I thought, okay, I mean, that's where we are. That's where we are, thank you.
I studied physics, it was like the amount of non-English as a first language speakers, and they're using all these complex physics terms. And I asked the professor about it, and I was, well, the reason we use this language is sort of precise, right? I have to say what I mean, or we lose the plot a little.
Right.
So it was kind of a point of contention, especially when I was going there, I think our international.
Yeah, well, plus it's the next Ponzi scheme. So in the 80s, it was admit more to give more financial aid, which led to overcrowding. And so see how it was working, like they'll take more from
Now it's
from other folks. But then they found out that didn't work. Right. So then they went, the second scheme was to raise the standard. That was the so-called Renaissance program at the U of R. What that meant was, because money always follows success. So if they raised the standards, then the applicants would be better prepared to pay the tuition, right? Because performance has always matched the demographic of affordability. Now, what happened, I don't know when it happened, because I'm not sure when it happened. But now, almost all of what I would call the AAA universities, especially the private ones in the East, because everything's sort of different out West, and we're a AAA university. I mean, Rochester goes, no, they are. That's the comparative in Latin for better. Like it's sort of the Avis to the Hertz argument, like we try harder, like we're not Yale, like that kind of thing. And but all of the colleges sort of in our category have enormous international student populations. Why? They pay retail. They pay retail. They pay retail. So those kids are subventing the financial aid program. Now, without any controversy, I'll just say it plainly, a significant number of those students, especially from the People's Republic and China and applicants, are way down. And there's some big meeting on Monday about how we're going broke because they're not coming back because of where we are, right? Because they feel unwelcome and because exactly. So I don't know. That's where we are. Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. We've had a lovely time. I mean, I've had a great time. I don't know about you, but I've had a great time here. This has been a blast. I've really enjoyed it a lot. And this is our last session. And welcome back, Ron. It's so good to see you. I'm glad you're here. I just want to say, I'll try to end on time for sure, because I've run over a little bit. But so I want to say thank you in advance so that I don't feel rushed at the end. But I do very much welcome this invitation. It's been really lovely, and I've had a good time talking with you. And the exchange and the conversation I think has been interesting. I mean, I think we've learned, and it's been personable and serious at the same time, and so much the better for that, So thank you for that. The text, so we've been reading poetry from the Rig Veda, which is the oldest poetry from ancient India, and in that material, I wanted to kind of introduce us to a vision of the universe that undergoes its own development and rethinking in a process of history, where peoples came with song and poetry and visionary understandings of who they were and what kind of a world they lived in. And the people who composed the Veda had ancient ancestors and migrants, and were migrants. And we've talked a lot about that story and how they came. And that when they arrived, as it were, in what we would today call the subcontinent of India, the process of assimilation and adaptation and inclusion was really a rather fascinating story. And really scholarship hasn't quite entirely caught up with that phenomenon of these people who spoke this Indic language. That's what we call Vedic. And most of the early scholarship that tried to figure out this history centered on linguistic studies and philology. That's the study of ancient texts. And to that end, I'd also say that that many of those characters, and we talked a little bit about like who they were, because at this point in my life, I'm really fascinated by who did this, like who, what kind of a person went, I want to go there and find out about this. Does that make any sense? And because so many of the early scholars were colonialists, obviously, and Europeans from an intellectual tradition of the 19th century that had its own ebb and flow, but they were all in a certain way very interesting characters. Like what compelled them to look across the world and in some sense to take up a subject that was not who they were. Does that make sense? They weren't speaking to their own histories, to their own ethnicities, to their own religion, to their own tribe. They were interested in the world. And one of the very first discoveries that emerged in the early part of the 18th century was that as genuinely different and as exotic as it seemed, the languages that they first encountered when they encountered these Indic languages were, as Sir William Jones, the British scholar, said, more than a coincidental relationship to the languages of the ancient Western antiquity. And Jones gave a very famous address in which he kind of mapped out what had been known for probably 100 years, but had now kind of formally landed. And of course, one of the scholarly mistakes that kind of first entered the conversation was that these scholars, when they discovered Vedic as the ancestral language of Sanskrit, Vedic is to Sanskrit what, just to give us an analogy for our own sake, would be more like Beowulf to our English, like not Shakespeare, not Chaucer, just keep going, right? And if you go all the way back to the oldest myths of Beowulf, I was just reading the other day, because by the way, there's a beautiful Seamus Heaney, the Irish poet, did a lovely verse translation of the mythologies of Beowulf. And Beowulf is what we call Old English. And when you hear Heaney recite it, it sounds Nordic, right? And of course, the language closest to modern English ancestrally is a Dutch language called Frisian. Like that's our nearest neighbor. So how interesting is that? And then of course, English has its own sort of magnificent history of adaptation and assimilation, and then everything changes in 1066, and we can kind of go through all sorts of history of the evolution of the English language. And pause on that too, because some of you will remember the McNeill-Lehrer report. I think it was McNeill, Robin McNeill, who did a PBS show called The Story of English. And I warmly recommend going back to that. It was a really good book. The videos are still there. It was a PBS series on the history of the English language. And particularly, it also kind of gave us a lot of insight into the dialectical changes that happened when English landed in America. And it kind of went all the way through the history of English. It was wonderful and curious and interesting thing to do. These folks who were in the 18th century looking at the ancient world were looking to try to explain these connections. And their principal tools, of course, were language and archaeology. That is what you could dig up and tell from people. And one of the most important principles of archaeology is pots are not people, which means that when you dig something up, it doesn't necessarily tell you about those people, like how did it get there, who brought it there. There's all kinds of other questions that you can ask when you sort of say, well, who was here, like who did this? But one of the more interesting features of the third revolution, so there are three sources of knowledge. When I was a kid, it was comparative linguistics and archaeology, from which we kind of culled out history that way. But what's happened, of course, is that we now have the human genome. And of course, what we've discovered is that those ancestral folk who over a 2 or 3 or 4,000 year period made their way from the Caucasus, from the Ukraine, from the Donbass, really, and went east. Our genetic ancestors, we are all, as it were, carrying so much of the same markers. There's a great story of commingling and borrowing and trade and wonderful sorts of things that happened, especially in South India, because the South Indians were traders with the Middle East. And so even in South Indian languages, we find words that are certainly borrowed from Semitic languages, from Hebrew, from Arabic, from ancient worlds in the Middle East. But in the history of working out this poetry and this song and this story of these migrants, the missing feature in that early 18th century project was that the folks deep in South India, who we've talked about also, who today speak the Tamil language, there are probably 75 million Tamil speakers in the world. That language down there way in the south of India, the modern city is Chennai, we would call it Madras. That city deep in South India that's on the eastern coast, today called Chennai. That was a fishing village before the Brits got there. The real ancient center of South India is a city called Madurai, and it's on the 10-degree line, right down there in the tip of India. Like if you look at India like this, it's right in the center, almost on the 10-degree line. It's one of the oldest continuously inhabited places in the world. So there have been people there pretty much as long as there have been people. And then that genome project, I have a 6 degrees of separation relationship to, because I was translating as a kid after, I think I've told you this story, well, I'm working with the predecessors to Doctors Without Borders. And a typhoon had come through, that's a hurricane such as it is. And so we went out to these villages, and the short end of that story is that as it went forward, those same doctors ended up doing the genetic work that then demonstrated that these deep South Indian people are more genetically related to Aboriginal Australians and to people in Papua New Guinea than they are to these migrant folk who brought this poetry, this Vedic poetry. And last time we talked about how these migrant Indic people, so let's put a date on that. Let's say they get there somewhere between 1800 and 1500 before the Christian era. That's when these folks as migrants arrive in northern India. And my ancestors are living in caves and painting themselves blue. These folks are immensely sophisticated, but they're also deeply rooted in an oral culture because their history is pastoral and migratory. And then fast forward to, say, the Alexandrian era, when Alexander of Macedon arrives, his own histories, the Greeks tell us that these are not people of the book. What they mean by that is they don't write things down. And yet that poetry of the Veda that I offer to you is not only substantively the same as it was in antiquity, it's one of the strangest and most important features of the history of the transmissions of these cultures, the continuities of these peoples. So if we were in the far north of India, deep in the south, in the east or the west, like just draw a diamond around India, and we entered into the castes and the communities of stewardship who kept the ancient lore, and especially the Vedic poetry, particularly. We could meet people who have had certainly no historical or physical connection with one another for more than 1,000 years. And we could hear them recite this poetry, not the same way, but syllable by syllable, perfectly the same way. So, and in the history of India, writing things down was never the priority because it was considered too volatile. Like you could change things if you wrote things down. And so the project created these enormously sophisticated mnemonic memorizing methods. And I can show you some of how that was done, because when I landed in India as a 19-year-old and wanted to study the Veda, one of the first things my teacher did was send me to what's called a toll, sent me to a Vedic school with a group of 6-year-olds who were much better at it than I learned Veda and cricket from those kids. And they would laugh at how bad I was. But what happens is that this poetry was memorized not for its content, but for its preservation. And and quickly drew a powerful and important distinction between the songs and stories that represented those cultures and those values and those mythological visionary images, and how they were collecting it and memorizing it. So as I said, Vedic sounds like Beowulf to our English, to a kind of modern Sanskrit. So by the 5th century before the Christian era, these folks have been migratory, how should we say, settlers into India, spread their influence all across India, moved in communities of stewardship and adaptation all throughout India. These folks, so they start in the Northwest because that's where the migrants came, and they meet these people of the South. We talked about that. Last time we talked about the marriage of heaven and earth, the people of the sky. because those migratory people, of course, came across the great grasslands of Central Asia, gave us all the words for wheel, all the words for chariots, all that vocabulary of cattle and horses, because that's who they came from. And of course, if that's who they weren't going to write things down. Like nobody's lugging their books around, right? But the methods of mnemonics, of memorization, are just astonishing, like and unparalleled in the history of humanity. Whereas in comparison in the Middle East, for example, there's a great deal of care and nurture to the organization of the material and its not only its compositions, but its preservation in written forms, right? I so love and admire like when Torah comes out and it's pointed and the sort of the reverence for the book, such as it is, and as a treasure house, as a statement of culture, as a statement of this is what we do, right? We are you people of the book. And the Indians were not people of the book. They were people of consciousness, of the mind. And the way they rationalized, the way they did this, of course, is they sat in circles or they spoke to each other. Alexander's historian Demosthenes tells a very interesting story about this, about how they're the Macedonians, they're the Greeks. They've been conquering the world, right? So they've been adapting, assimilating, begging, borrowing, stealing, raping, pillaging, and plundering all the way from Greece to India. And these are the first, and the historian says, these are people we can cut a deal with because they're good to their word. And the way they compose their word is they sit in small groups and they repeat back. Like, did you hear this? Did you hear this? It's almost like, help me here, Rabbi. It's like having a minion. It's like having a sort of a substantive circle of veridical truth. Like you want to know something's true, get everyone to agree. And then they took their poetry, and in order to preserve it perfectly, they memorized it literally as syllabary, right? So when we can think of the poems and the songs of the Rig Veda as 1,028 hymns, stories, and songs. They're divided into 10 books. We can do it that way. But to the steward Brahmin, to the priest who's reciting the Veda, this is 500,000 syllables. This is not 1,028 songs. And those Vedic priests, by the age of the Buddha, 1,000 years before, they've been there 1,000 years, the age of the Buddha is about 500 before the Christian era, are really no longer connected to the meanings of the texts. They're connected only to their perfect preservation. And what they understood was that the sounds of the texts themselves bore the efficacy of their meaning. So the transition was from reading a vision of the world in song and story, which is how they were originally composed, to a vision of the world that said, this ancestral music is the music of the cosmos. It's the sound of the universe. It is literally Veda, like as in our word veridical or verify, or the Greek oida. Those are oida is the cognate, meaning the Greek word that's the Sanskrit word. So as they memorized the project of the syllabary, they assigned, as it were, the orchestration, the formulations of the sounds themselves, not as words, not for the meanings, not for the stories, not for the poetry, but for the perfect recitation of the music. This is the concept of mantra. That's what a mantra is. So a mantra doesn't dazzle you or send you into some sort of soporific state of disconnect, right? The origin of mantra was quite the opposite. The origin of mantra was that you are literally unveiling the code, the matrix of the universe that was streaming behind your appearances. So their notion was that the very sounds of their poetry were the organizational elements that structured the universe. It's
like the perfect mirror to
it is the matrix.
Jewish idea of the language of Hebrew.
Yes.
The structure.
Right. And the comparisons there and in Kabbalah and to mantra are myriad and that would be a lovely conversation to pursue in in a comparative framework. I mean, what a lovely idea. But these folks were so entirely committed to this project. Now, they're committed to a project to their most ancient poetry. Language, as we know, moves kind of reliably in almost 500-year evolutions. I mean, that's why, like, you think now, then you go Shakespeare, then you go Chaucer. You can see those are almost 500-year increments. But in the history of humans, the evolution of language is kind of strangely developing over that kind of project. And 1,000 years back is almost invariably the place in the course of the language where what we're speaking today would be unintelligible to them. And we couldn't understand them. Now, in English, that's a very much exaggerated issue because of the strange history of English. And as I said, if we were listening to Alfred the Great in 1026, right, what would he sound like? Like, what would the English of that sound like? And it would sound like Dutch to us, like kind of Dutch with a mouthful of s'mores, like kind of like really strange Dutch. Closest to modern Frisian, which is again that Dutch language up there on the coast. So by the time of the Buddha, these stewards of the Veda don't understand the language they're reciting. But they're actually not really interested any longer in the language, if what we mean by that is the meaning and the songs and the stories. They're interested in the sounds, in the perfect syllabary. Now, what they've, yes, please.
Project carried on by elite.
Yes, it's carried on by a priestly corps. Yes. No, not at all. This is the 0.1% that do this. And my teacher belongs to that tradition. That's how I got into the school to do it. Part of that. Yes. Yeah. So, exactly. And that preservation project, such as it is then taken to be literally the elemental forms of reality. Now, the way they think about this is a very beautiful way. They think of the letters themselves. So Sanskrit and Vedic are the only languages in the world in which the organization of what we would call the alphabet follows a linguistic pattern that we as comparative students of history of linguistics completely freak us out and we don't understand how. The vowels come before the consonants. Simple vowels turn into complex vowels by their own generative relationship. And then the consonants are organized in seven sets of 5 + 3 + 3, all of which follow the patterns of movement of sound in the human mouth. So the reason vowels don't come first is because the tongue doesn't move when you say a vowel. So when you begin the recitation of the Vedic or Sanskrit alphabet, and that changes a little bit. There are sounds in Vedic that aren't in Sanskrit, but doesn't appreciably change. It starts ah, e, u, like that, and you hear the vowels recited. And one of the first things you learn is that the tongue isn't moving. The last of the consonants, I'm going to try not to bore you with this, but keep you interested, right? The last of the vowels, right, has a particular purpose. And its purpose is to take you back to the first vowel. So the last vowel makes an echoing sound. Its purpose is to echo the last sound before it. So I'll give you a simple example. So in Sanskrit, one of the words for God is Deva, right? So Deva will take you to the English divinity, because it goes back to a Proto-Indo-European root that takes you to a root called div, which is to shine or to illumine. So the gods are the luminous beings, and to be divine that's what all the halos and stuff is archetypally all about. It's about light, right? And in the beginning there was light, and God is the light giver. And God is not only the light giver, God is the light, like literally light, right? So the word Deva is one of the words, there's a zillion of them, for the sublime, for the divine. And when we go through the Sanskrit alphabet, if we want to use that word deva grammatically, we're going and use it as the subject of the sentence, then it's going to use that last vowel. Instead of saying deva, it says devaha, right? So it echoes the last sound. If it were Devi, which would be the goddess, it would be Devihi, right? So the purpose of the last vowel is to bring you back to the first vowel. Why? And to echo, and so that the process of the vowels can become recursive, so that they can then apply to every consonant. So imagine the vowels as they happen to be 16, right? You come to the last one. Its project is to take you back to the first vowel, so that the next time through, when the consonants begin, you can go ka, ka, ki, ki, ku, ku. You can apply the vowels to the consonants because the vowels are generating the power of the consonants. For that to happen, the universe has to be recursive. That is, the instruction to repeat has to be built into the instruction, like lather, rinse, repeat. Right? Like I figured this out one morning, literally taking a shower. Like I looked at the shampoo bottle, lather, rinse, repeat. Till when? Like, how would you know? How much? But the difference isn't that this isn't mere repetition. This is recursion. And this is a really important idea to understand this ancient work, because it believes that the power to produce and literally reproduce is built into the instructions. It isn't extrinsic. It didn't come from anywhere else. What does the universe do? My Indian teacher used to say it very sweetly. He says, the universe only says one thing, again. Because its purpose is that its creative project is that it is built into itself. The vowels, which form the foundation for all sounds, and begin with the first sound, which is, and in fact, they're going to tell us that there's an unspoken sound before the first sound, of course. There's ah. And they're going to give us a whole unspoken hidden reality before manifestation, because the vowels represent the development of manifestation from simple to complex. We arrive at the end. I said there were two important vowels at the end. The first brings a stop to it. So it's called anuswara. So it would be like devam. It closes the lips, but it brings a punctiliar moment. Does that make sense? It brings a sense of completion or fulfillment. But then that one is followed by our friend, the recursive vowel. This is called visarga or emission, that vowel, which is all the sensual, sexual connotations of that are taken up later symbolically as a generative universe, right? That's the vowel that repeats, that echoes. And the purpose of it sounding like an echo is, of course, to get the whole project to repeat itself. And then to take the consonants, which would otherwise be unpronounceable, and to apply all 16 vowels to all 36 consonants. Or it depends how you want to count, but 36, 38, that gets a little messy, but more or less. So they're telling us that the universe is not only encoded this way, but that the code itself is what creates the universe. So the idea here isn't that we figured this, isn't that we are inventing this idea. The idea of the Veda is that listening to the universe, this is what you will hear. You will hear, and what it means to be a sage or a rishi in the Veda was to sort out this problem at this elemental level. So we're gonna end up with 16 vowels and 36 or however many we want. We're going to end up with 48, 50, or 51 letters of the alphabet. Again, that has its own, like it has a real history, so it gets complicated, right? But those 51 letters, which then apply, right? So there's 51 elements. So we have like our first, so let me give you an example. Our first consonant is the sound ka, or Like it would be K, right? But you can't say it without a vowel, right? So we're going to take all 16 vowels and apply it to that first consonant. Then because the vowels repeat, because that's what they do, because it's recursive, we can apply the next 16 vowels to the next letter and the next letter. So now you can see how the universe literally exponentially grows when vowels apply to consonants. Ka, ka, ki, ki, ku, ku, ke, kai, ko, ow, like that. So that as every vowel applies to every consonant, you're literally streaming the universe into being. And how does it do this? It does it because this is what it does. That's the argument. And so the rishi, the sage's purpose isn't to devise a system to explain the universe. It's literally to listen and find what we might call this periodic table of being. And that periodic table of being divides into this most elemental way between vowels and consonants. Now, by the time we get to the Veda, that vision is one of it's a self-generative reality, right? Because remember, it doesn't need a beginning. It doesn't have an ending because vowels and consonants all the way down. Meaning, if the universe is on the back of a turtle, what's the turtle on? It's turtles all the way down, right? So the argument is, of course, that the power of the universe to make and remake itself happens over the course of time. You can see that 21st century terms in macrocosmic time, like last time it did this, 12.8 billion years ago. But in fact, it's happening in every moment. It's happening all the time. Because even in our own bodies, every cell is replacing itself with itself. That's what it does. Now, when it succeeds perfectly, we don't age, right? Because there's no mistake, right? But we know that the process, and we also know now, because we have the genetic code part of our whole information system, is that there are whole segments of the human genetic code that haven't appreciably changed in millions of years. That is, what we have successfully done is repeat certain pieces of our code. And every time it comes out exactly the same way. And by recursive, we mean it's the same so that you couldn't tell the difference between one and the next. And the process of it replacing itself with itself, if it were perfect, would be unnoticeable. Because one thing would be the next thing. So it's only when a glitch in the matrix, it's only when there's some imperfection, when there's some way in which the process doesn't quite hit the mark, that change happens. So it's a universe that in some sense is committed to continuity. It's also committed to sameness. Think about that, because it's recursive. What does it want to do? It wants to repeat itself. Why does it do it? Because that's what it does. Like that's just what it does, right? And when it repeats itself perfectly, things are stable and unchanging. When it glitches, like when it misses the mark, then that can cause problems. Like we'll grow old because we're not replacing ourselves perfectly, so we grow old, right? Or you can have literally dis-ease, right? Because ease is perfect replacement, and dis-ease is when it doesn't work out. Like there's an imperfect recursion. Now, but that imperfect repetition, that imperfect recursion is also the only way change can happen. It's the only way progress can happen. Because otherwise we would have stayed bacteria. Like, in other words, if it just repeated itself perfectly, nothing would have ever evolved, right? Because we evolve because those imperfections, those recursions, those mistakes, then repeat themselves and succeed. That's the theory of natural selection. The Vedas got, not to overstate the case, they've got this exactly right. That is, in terms of the way natural selection says, how do we sustain ourselves as human beings? The answer is, we recur, and we exist to recur, right? We exist to make more of ourselves. That's what we do. And when we do it most successfully, then there's a sustainability because just enough of the code holds itself together and doesn't change. And the rest of the code undergoes this recursive process. And then every time it really makes an important tipping point, like you have children, right? Then the combinations and reformulations give us both perfection, that is sustainable, repetitive pieces of puzzle, and it makes differences. It makes changes. Some of those changes are catastrophic, right? Like if the code doesn't, like it mutates and it doesn't hold together, it isn't going to survive. Some of those changes give us the variations, like my brother's eyes are brown, mine are blue. Those possibilities are all existing in the universe. So what the Veda wanted to do was describe the matrix of possibilities that make the universe in two ways simultaneously. The first way was to repeat itself perfectly, right? In that way, now think of the letters of the alphabet. Let's go back here. The vowels come before the consonants. This is the most basic structure. All the other sounds, all the words, all the sounds are going to be made from putting a vowel to a consonant, and a consonant to a vowel, and a consonant to a consonant to a vowel. So all those kinds of changes and permutations that are going to literally explode into being. But if we think of the alphabet as they did, as happening in only one way, that is, you start with the simplest vowel, you get to that 16th vowel, then the repetition starts, and then they're going to show us that the consonants that follow the pattern inside your mouth. So the next piece of this is that the vowels don't move the tongue, but as soon as you start the pattern of this, there are 7 sets of 5 that go through this, you find that it moves from back to front, right? And it literally takes your tongue from the back of your mouth to the front of your mouth, then between your teeth, then to the labials, then it does that, right? It closes you down. And then what does it do? It repeats it. So every time you land on the next set of consonants, it repeats the process. It goes back and then forward, and back and then forward. Now, this fast forward, I'm going to fast forward and lose you a little bit, but it's too much fun not to say this, right? This idea where the consonants aren't, where the vowels haven't moved, the tongue doesn't move when you say a vowel, right? So the mouth is open, as it were, and then the tongue moves. Later on, this symbolically is going to be the feminine and masculine relationship, because the unmoving vowels are going to be feminine encoded, and the tongue that's moving across the palate is going to be masculine encoded. The tongue is going to be linga, the symbol, the sign, the signifier. And the enunciation of vowels and consonants is literally the goddess, the feminine encoded vowels, making love with the masculine encoded tongue. So that the universe is literally regenerative inside your mouth.
These people were tripping.
Exactly. I'm 19 when this was first explained to me. Hey, what's part 2? So, are we having fun with this? Is this interesting?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have an alphabet, right? And its generative formulation happens in only one way, right? From the simplest vowel to the recursive vowel, and then the consonants only happen in a similar order. Now, there's all kinds of linguistic rules about this that can later be applied, but intuitively, they end up with an alphabet that follows the movement of sound across the palate as an allegory for the creation of the universe. And see what's happening inside the enunciation of sound. as mirroring the complexities that create the world.
Are there similarities like this to other languages or?
No. In the history of comparative linguistics, this is the only alphabet that does this. And we don't know, and it's always been this way. So we don't know, it's not like somebody thought this up. That's what's so archetypal and strange about it. So we have no explanation about how they figured this out, except that clearly the notion of sound and music and the organization of the universe was more than just representative or symbolic. It was elemental. They saw sound as the creative principle. And they're going to align that sound with light. So again, later on, I'm fast forwarding again, but to follow the symbologies and the stories in Hindu mythologies, follow the senses. Is the metaphor sonic? Does it resonate with you? Is the metaphor photic? See what I mean? How does that taste? Does that taste to you? Did that touch you? See, so follow the metaphors. And the metaphors are embodied. They follow the senses. Two principal metaphors are sonic and photic. From all of that out, the rest is spun. The rest is woven out of that because they understand. But so and let's go back to that one way in which the alphabet appears. Now, take a different example. If we had, let's do it this way. If we had an unbound copy of the 5 books of Moses on the table, and the books were, and it was in, let's say, 1 to 1,008. Let's call it 1,000 pages. We'll call it 1,008 pages because Hindus like that number. Okay, let's say there's 1,008 pages. We'll call it War and Peace. We'll call it the Torah. It doesn't matter. But they're in order. They're in order. There's only one way in which the book is in order. Is that correct? Now it's unbound. So now the fan goes on, or the wind blows, and the papers fly everywhere. What are the odds of the world coming back to 1 to 1,008? Almost impossible, right? So there's one way in which they're perfectly ordered, and all the other ways in which they could be ordered. So this idea further latches on to our folks here. They call the as it were, the perfect order, the 1 to 1,000, like page 1 to 1,000, the pages are in proper order. They call this Matrika Shakti. So the word Shakti means power, and the word Matrika, you can hear this, is the word mater, that's mother, and Matrika is a diminutive, so it means little mother. It's the power of the little mothers. The power of the little mothers is the organization of sound from to ksha. There's only one way it happens. So the universe is encoded motherly in its origin. The recursive project births the universe with a possibility of order. But it's very rigorously difficult to keep order, right? Because things fall apart, or the wind blows, or the pages fall off the top, right? Or the recursion doesn't happen right. Like one of the reasons what I was doing at the kitchen table before I left, I printed up 10 of these. And you have a printer, like it's all goofy. I had to put them all like into 1 to 10s. I tried to hand them to you in order. So I had to I'm sitting there sorting for 30 minutes, like getting this together going, that's what I'm going to talk about, right? Because the universe is literally sorting itself out. Now, what they want to tell us is something really wonderfully interesting. They want to tell us that the possibility of there being order in the universe is real. And we can see it again as 21st century people because, scientists in the room, because hydrogen comes first, right? And when Mendeleev creates the periodic table, he leaves room for the mathematics of the next element, even before they found it, right? And it's carbon 8, I can't remember, something like that. But what I mean to say is there's only one way. Like if you go from hydrogen, helium, nitrogen, right? all the way to unobtainium. I don't know what's at the other end. But whatever the hell is on the end of the thing, but there's only one way in which it's ordered, but it is ordered. And the genius of the periodic table is that that order, in some sense, is there to be had, right? Mendeleev isn't like inventing the order. There's math, like it works out. It's there. He's representing the order. That orderliness is called the power of the little mothers. The little mothers are the sounds of the alphabet, vowels and consonants. But what happens to the little mothers is that they entangle and they play and they garland, which means that the pages get mixed up. And so there's only one way in which it's 1 to 1008. But if we had 1008 pages, how many different ways could they be ordered? Right? So it'd be like, it's a factorial equation, right? And the number gets like really big, like unimaginably big. This is how the universe is created. It's created from an elemental order that literally plays, reorders itself by disorder. Because the wind blows, and that one way in which hydrogen starts the project and unobtainium ends it, or starts the project and shot, the last letter of the alphabet finishes the project. Think of it the same way. There's only one way in which that works in as it were, Matrika sequence, the perfect orderly sequence. The other sequence they call Malini Shakti. Malini means garlanding, right? But a mala is a garland. But but it's also like the name of your neighbor's daughter. There's lots of Malinis in the world. It's a common girl's name. Because that I and I on there, that's a sweetness in Sanskrit, that's a diminutive, that's like a chiquita, like a mala malini. Like I tell the students that this is what zucchinis are. It's not really true. It's just yanking on them because of the I and I ending. But this is a sweetness ending. So this disorder, this way in which the letters can happen in any order, or can be applied to create this myriad factorial possibility world, is not purely dysfunction. It's play. It's Malini. So now the universe has a principle of order that's built into it. There's a principle of recursion, of being capable of making itself again and again, right? Because it's built into it. And order, as we know, it's really hard to keep going, right? Because somehow that same orderly world is also, let's use a physics word, entropic. It moves to disorder. Well, you got, like, this is easy. You just came home from Israel, right? Yeah. So God knows you didn't do anything, but there are dust bunnies under the bed, right? Because you got to keep doing it. You ever have that feeling like when you finally clean the kitchen and the house is nice, and you go, we have to make dinner, and you go, oh, no, like we got to do dishes again. So you're constantly in the process of ordering and reordering, and this is going to be vitally important to our folks. If you don't pay attention, dust bunnies happen. Dishes accumulate. Like you don't even have to do anything, and things fall apart. Everybody clear about that? Like they just. But in this ancient world, that falling apart can be disastrous, but it can also be playful. It can be beautiful, because your children don't look just like you. They are their own little sweetness, their own little Malini. Everyone is their own precious garland of that peculiar way in which those same 51 things can reorder themselves. Now you go back to genetic code, and it's only 4 ACGs and Ts. And we're all made of the same stuff, right? And if to be a living human, to be a living being, as far as we know, right? As far as we know, a carbon-based living being, right? There are only 4 variables, right? And everything that lives is doing the same thing. Like we have the same DNA as a turnip. Sometimes when I'm sitting with undergraduates, I feel that. Are these turnips? They're about as responsive as turnips, but I don't know. Gotta get them to laugh. I can't educate you, I'm gonna amuse you. I can't do either of those, I'm gonna annoy you. So it's like I'm the crest. Okay, so we've got a world that includes, that orders itself, because we know that happens. But we have a world that disorders itself in order, literally, to celebrate, to create more possibilities. Now, part of it is celebration, because when it reorders, it's reconfiguring, but it's not only celebrating, it's including the possibility of failure, right? Because the pages are a little out of order, and too much disorder, and things really fall apart. But not enough disorder, and things are stuck being the same. Get it? So if the universe just were orderly, we would still be bacteria and nothing would change, because everything would be perfectly replicated. There'd be no progress, there'd be no evolution, there'd be no growth. And yet, and when we introduce change by this Molany process, by letting the winds blow, by letting the order to come up however it can, however it might, in that amazing factorial way, right? We invite celebration and we invite catastrophe. Both things are true. We invite celebration because your grandchildren are lovely and they look a little like you and not like you and something like you. Ah, there you go. So now we're entering a world in which the process of ourselves can be thought of in three ways. I'm not you because each configuration is different. I'm something like you because our configurations have to work in the same process of what we would call matrika Molany, orderly and matrika Molany, meaning little mothers plus garlanding plus mixing it up, orderly plus mixing it up. Okay? So I'm not you because because your configuration is not my configuration. I'm like you because we're all mixing up the same stuff. That's the only possibility. We're all working in the same alphabet. We're all working on the same A, G, C's, and T's. We're all working in the same matrix. And I'm nothing but you. Because what else could we be but literally all the same? So now you get a vision of the world in which I'm not you preserves our integrity, gives you that beautiful sense of you're you and not me. And we can celebrate that. If we misappreciate that, we can other that. Right? I'm not you, so why should I care about you? Right? Or I'm not you, but I celebrate you because difference is a beautiful thing. I'm something like you, which means we can somehow figure out other sorts of things like, do you like vanilla? I like vanilla. There's a resemblance theory. But once we get to I'm nothing but you, we may have arrived at a shared humanity. So we can celebrate difference, we can look for resemblance, but then we can say, you know what? I'm human, you're human. And what is the universe doing? It's just doing that again and again and again, and that's what it's doing. So this basic triangulation of identity, right? I'm not you because difference is real. I'm something like you because the changes are little bits of bits and can be compared. And I'm nothing but you gives us back a soulful, inclusive, comprehensive identity, a comprehensive identity. I'm not only nothing but you, we are all literally the same identity.
Are
Please,
these
tell me your name again.
Jim?
Yes.
Are
I'm
these
sorry.
concepts in Hinduism?
Yes. And they come out of the Vedic poetry that I gave you. And I'm taking you to where we're going, hopefully. Are we having fun?
Yeah. Question, just thinking about chaos versus order.
Right.
Is there an assumption that order came first?
No.
Because you know how in the beginning
Yeah.
it's chaos.
No, yes, the Vedic world prefers chaos coming first. And it prefers order as an emergent principle. Like, right, and because it understands order to be a rare commodity. Because there's only one of them. In terms of like 1 to 51. For mapping letters, there's only one way. There's only one way in which all the pages in the book are 1 to 1,000. It's the same idea. Right? All the other permutations are possible. So, which also kind of, in this Indian world, it's going to say, this is important because being here is an exquisitely rare privilege. And we should give that integrity to everyone. Because, as my teacher once put it, you were the point the universe was trying to make, and it went to a great deal of trouble to do it. Please. Tell me your name, sir.
Lester,
Thank you.
you say there's only one way to put this book together.
Great.
But what happens if I read from back to front? That's another way of putting it.
Yeah,
together.
exactly.
It's also correct.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
you're putting a human value to try to understand something that's maybe
Okay,
understandable.
we can understand that, but hydrogen comes first and then unobtainium comes last, right? So they're not thinking that the order is arbitrary, is just ours. They are going to say, your brilliant observation is exactly right. I have a personal experience of this I'll share with you, that you can start anywhere and still figure out the book. But the book of life, such as it is, that they're talking about, has an order.
But we don't know if the periodic table has another order also. For
Right, it could.
something else.
It could, right? And then there are layers and layers of secrecy and other orders. And they're not saying it's fixed at one. They're saying this is a model from which we can build other models.
So we're just trying to understand.
Yeah, for sure.
Understand.
For sure. So I went on a pilgrimage way up in the central Himalayas to one of the places with the source of the Ganga, just on the other side. And this was in the 70s, and it's a bus to a rickshaw to 15 miles into the jungle. And we miscalculated, but we had two fun events. This is a commercial interruption here, just for fun. On the way down, it was the 4th of July, and we stopped at these hot springs. There were these sort of large Bengali men bathing in the hot springs. And my buddy and I, we're both 20 years old now, saw these guys in the hot spring, and I guess, it's the 4th of July. So we sang the Star Spangled Banner in harmony, because I was the tuba player and knew the back part. So, and then the guy in the hot spring goes, yeah, we proclaimed that this is the day we freed ourselves from the Raj. Right? And he goes, yeah, but you kept his money. That's what the guy said. So we came down and we arrived where we're supposed to get the bus, and it's pouring rain. Now, long story short is we were stuck in a tea stall the size of this table for about 3 days. And with nothing but like recycled tea, which is pretty bad order, and biscuits, basically, while we're waiting for this bus. This ends up being kind of a fun and long story. But the short of it is, my buddy is reading the Brothers Karamazov, and it's pretty well. It's in 2 volumes, and he's pretty well along with volume 1. And I'm like, just rip the book, man. Like, give me volume 1. He goes, no. He hands me volume 2. So I read Karamazov volume 2 before volume 1. I've never really gotten it right since. Like, I keep buying it, thinking someday I'm going to get this order right. Like, someday I'll understand this book, because I'm completely wounded by the disorderly event of having my first confrontation with the book is like, start at the back, start anywhere. But you're exactly right. The later mystics and philosophers are exactly on your point, which is that it's the appearance of one order, but what it really is a chaotic world in which order is just another way of envisioning possibility. How many possibilities are plausible changes the question. And that's where they want to go.
Les's question is easily answered. Is relative order versus absolute order.
Right.
right? You can get things in the right order, but then you pull back a little bit and look, and then you find out that the pieces are in order, but then there's a larger picture and that's not in order.
Right.
And you see that in the world of science all the time.
So
That's how far back you go.
so for our poets,
How do we know see the largest?
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And part of what they want to do is keep pulling back and then keep re-examining, which takes us to where we've been in our previous sessions, which is to say, how do they describe that universe? They pose it as a question. Instead of saying there is a creator who did this, they say, who is the creator who did this? And as I said last time, it's an Abbott and Costello joke. Yes, who is the creator who did this? So, exactly, because it stays, because the universe isn't offering you an answer. It's inviting you to the question. It's inviting you to an openness, to an inquiry.
That goes on forever.
That goes on forever. So it's not offering you a solution. It's offering you a query, a possibility, a question. And that's why the god of the Veda that we studied before is literally called Kaha, not Sa. Kaha means who in Sanskrit, not Sa, him, or he, or it, or she. Now, that idea, though, that there is a plausible absolute order, like one we can work with, is part of what they want to talk about. So it doesn't have to be that there's only one way the universe could be. It just has to be, this happens to be, and this is why it's also cyclical. This happens to be the way it worked out this time. Now, because that can create beautiful garlands, lovely celebrations of difference, can also create malfunctions and disease, dis-ease, and catastrophe. So there's a significant part of the tradition that looks at the way it turned out this time and kind of goes, we could have done better. Like, did it really have to be this way? Like there is that part of the tradition that says we're in a world in which those variables, those possibilities, also leave us with real catastrophe or capriciousness. Why do bad things happen to good people? Or how does some perfectly lovely, innocent person end up suffering miserably? Part of the answer they're going to give is that they got literally dealt a bad hand. Literally, that's what the universe is doing. It's dealing you a hand. And you can end up with a bad deal. The Lou Gehrig problem. Right? And so instead of, the takeaway from here is interesting. Instead of saying there's evil in the world or there's fallen from sin in the world, what there is possibilities that don't quite work out. That's as far as they'll go. So they're not going to invest the world with with that, they're going to invest the world with a vision of the very same thing that lets us celebrate difference also invites the kinds of changes we don't want. Like a bad diagnosis, which is just a series of events, information that no longer coheres in a sustainable way.
In terms of reincarnation,
Yeah.
do they say that, if you've lived a virtuous life,
Right.
done good, then you'll get dealt a better hand?
Okay, so, and inside these worlds, there's not one kind of answer to that. So one of the questions is this order and change universe, this Matrika Malini, this mother universe, right? Is it invested with a moral countenance? Is it good and evil? And some will say, some will say that's a projection or an imposition that we make. Like, you can't see a change and not evaluate. We're going to do that. Like, we're going to have preferences. We're going to have privileged answers. We're going to go, we like that, we don't like that. That's better, that's worse. But is the world invested in right and wrong? Probably not. The world's because the model here is power, desire, interest, advantage, success. It's a powerful world that organizes itself. And everything in that world is in its own process of kind of working out its possibility. and it's self-interest. So in this mythic world, the demons aren't evil. The demons are just contrary to your interests. Like, and they're unreliable, which is also kind of where they are mythically in the storytelling. I said this in class the other day. I shouldn't have said, yeah, the demons, the demons are kind of the epitome of demonhood in Hindu literature is selfishness, the failure to see connection. That triad of I'm not you, I'm like you, I'm nothing but you, they just go me, me, me. Right? Because the only thing that matters to them is them. Right? So evil is really a form of selfishness turning to kind of narcissism. Right? And then you can cut deals with them because everybody needs to make a deal. They eventually figure that out. But they're not very reliable deal makers, or they're conspiratorial, or they're not, like Republicans in Congress. That's exactly what they're just not people of the word. And then we're back to the very kind of first idea, is that are you a person of the word? And keeping your word is in some sense measuring out those relationships of order and possibility. And asking yourself, when does it succeed? When does it fail? What about it do we approve of? Call that good. What about it that we certainly will not approve of and we'll call that evil? So the text I gave you today, we're supposed to end. It'll be great.
Yes, we do.
Oh, thanks, Rabbi. I've had such a nice time being with you.
I think you're always welcome, and,
Definitely.
if I may,
Please.
I feel every moment we could listen to you is more important than me, praising you, but I wanna say that, first of all, I thank you so much for doing this. And, I heard some of the folks here who value one another, being some of the more, serious learners in this congregation, coming independently from that, those lectures, there was something else.
Oh,
So,
Frank, I mean, again,
so there's a blessing in Judaism that when we see someone who is wise, in a certain way, we have to say the blessing. We say Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Shechalak Michochmato Lire'av or Livnei Adam. So blessed are you, sovereign of the universe, who has given from God's wisdom to human beings, or to the human beings who worship God. So,
and who asked the great question?
So you give us the opportunity to fulfill the mitzvah of saying this blessing.
Thanks, Rabbi.
And I think that what you've done here, just for me, just listening, I can listen to you more and more, is what we're trying to do here at Temple Sinai, especially in this Wednesday night track, which is to open a channel of spiritual deep knowledge that we can learn from as a community, as an individual. Oftentimes we do it through our own, ancient traditions, Kabbalah, Jewish spirituality, etc. However, as you said, this wisdom exists in all those,
It's a human conversation.
Yeah, exactly, and it's just up in again, like you said, right? So thank you really so much. I think I'll speak for all of us for taking upon the invitation, for sharing our tiny bits.
It's just, that's my mild frustration is that
it's like opening a little tiny crack into an immense ocean of vast body of knowledge which you carry. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me give you one little clue for the thing I offered you today. First of all, this is a 19th century translation of one of the texts that follows out of the poetic tradition. And the reason I brought you this translation and not mine, that this is the first one I read as an 18-year-old. And the story that begins this, give me 3 minutes. The story that begins this begins in a world where a father who's done well in life and celebrating life and wants to celebrate the community and give back to the world is performing a great ritual sacrifice. And in that sacrifice, presumably, he is supposed to give away all of his possessions. He has this intrepid, brilliant little boy for a son, whose name is Nachiketas. And Nachiketas is seeing his father do this great performative gesture to the community and to the world, because the greatest act, of course, is to not just serve yourself, it's to make yourself a gift to others. Like, that's really the gist of what we've been trying to say all evening, that it's that connection and that gift we can make of ourselves to others, in the ways in which we're all the same, the ways in which these traditions can be resembling, the ways in which their difference gives us a chance to celebrate. So Nachiketas is looking at his pop, and he's going, hey, Dad, what about me? What about me? What about me? And he's tugging on Superman's cape. Like, who are you going to give me away to? Who are you going to give me away to? And his father, in a moment of adultness, says, I give you to death. Yeah. And the little boy ends up literally on death's doorstep. Now, Death's a character in this story. And just to give you an interesting notion, the word for death means limitation, constraint. The name of the god is Yama. So he ends up on death's doorstep, but death isn't there. Like, he's in Palm Springs, we don't know. He's playing, like, what's he doing? Is he out for dinner? But part of that little piece of the story is he's not really supposed to be there, because his father did this impetuous, rash thing. And so he's at death, and death isn't there. Death arrives 3 days later. There's an interesting archetype, isn't it? Death arrives 3 days later and says, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. So he says, I'll give you 3 blessings, 3 boons. And he's a little boy. The first thing he says is, can I go home now? Which is, when you think about it, it's an interesting comment, because he has to come back from the dead. But who better than death? Then, now this is a very clever boy. He says, but I would also like to learn, then for my second boon, I want to know this particular ritual that I'll put the pages in order, that will find my way back to from a chaotic world into a meaningful world. Meaningful difference, meaningful change, layers of understanding. And Death says, that's such a lovely thing to ask for. I'm going to name the sacrifice after you. But what he just learned was everything he needed to know to be back in the world. Third boon, the little boy says, now I need to know the secret of the universe. I need to know what death is. Is it a finality? Is it a beginning? What is it? Who am I? And Death says, you don't really want to know that. That could take some time. we might need several Wednesdays for that. We'd need some time. How about prosperity in the world? Because I know how to do that. You just taught me how to do that, right? How about this? How about that? And he's in some sense he's saying to the boy what Spinoza said to us, that all excellent things are difficult and rare. And to ask this question is to ask, do you really want to do this? Is this what you want to learn? Because you can go through life successfully, even happily, and never want that question, never want that. Am I merely this mortal coil? What else am I? And then the rest of the text, and then Death, Yama here, finally says, okay. And then he begins by saying, the good is one thing and the pleasurable is another. And he doesn't mean good in a moral sense. He means the things of value are different than the things that merely please you. Because the things that are truly of value are going to ask more of you, like love. Because if you dare to love, you will certainly grieve. You're thrown back into that world of possibility. The blessing of life must include all of its possibilities. And so the story carries on from there. But what he wants the little boy to know, in effect, is that enjoy, I'm not you. Enjoy in this birth the beautiful way in which you came. Just you. There'll never be another one. And lavish yourself in the way in which we are like each other. Even though that difference and that specificity is real, there is a way in which we share a human and a relationship to the world in which those connections are worthy of our comparison. But of course, what is death's real message? I'm nothing but you. My soul is your soul. So you have your own soul. Our souls we can talk about, but my soul is your soul. For in the embrace of the sublime, in the embrace of God, we are but that immortal gift made mortal form. Take care. Great, take it home. This is the first one I read as an 18-year-old, and it's what changed my life. It's a kind of awkward wooden 19th century translation. I can do better for you if you like. But enjoy. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Temple Sinai. Thank you, Rowan. What a pleasure to be here.
This has been great. So hopefully maybe we can have you back
Anytime.
again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining.
I'll make sure she sees me. Thank you.
Next time, don't use a big picture. It's very exactly what you need.
Item.
You know? Put it up in the corner.
Well, that was, when we switched it that way though, I don't know how to fix it.
So, which is.
But I think we got it, because we put it into gallery. Okay, I got it.
Digital history.
So you know.
Because I haven't been.
They never know we do this without, eventually I have such a.
Yes.
Where?
So,
You.
I was trained.
But no.
First mass.